Welcome back to Jolene's Books and Writers Talk, the place where we dig into the stories behind the storytellers. I'm your host, Jolene McFadden, and today we're talking with an author who approaches faith and scriptures from a deeply personal and questioning place. Constance Hastings didn't grow up in the church. She came in through the side door, raised by non-religious parents, educated in a Christian school, later becoming both a teacher of literature and a pastoral counselor. Her life path took unexpected turns, and she's been willing to wrestle with belief rather than accept it without examination. Her book, The Trouble with Jesus: Considerations Before You Walk Away, is not a sermon, it's a conversation. It's a book for people who are asking real questions, carrying real doubts, or reevaluating what they thought they believed. Whether your relationship with faith is steady, complicated, or somewhere in between, this is a conversation worth listening to. Let's get into it.
Hello, my name is Constance Hastings, and I come to you from a place where I should not be. My life was one that was taken in directions that I never would have guessed or even chosen as it is. However, I do believe that the hand of God was in that. So here I am today, having had a career in education, in faith-based counseling, and now as a writer and author of The Trouble with Jesus: The Considerations Before You Walk Away. I also have a companion blog to The Trouble with Jesus, and I just look forward to talking about what has happened with that book and what it can mean to you.
All right. Are you self-published or traditionally published?
Traditionally published through Morgan James Publishing, which is a hybrid publisher.
I learn a new publisher every time I talk to you guys. Is this your first book?
Yes, it is.
How long did it take you to conceive and get it to publishing?
Oh, it took a lot longer than it should have in some ways. I was asked to do a presentation to a group of women at a church, and I knew these women were smart, professional leaders, and they didn't want the usual women's Bible study sort of thing. They'd given me several months to think about it. I could not come up with anything. And I was really getting frustrated. One day I just looked up and I went, "The Troubles with Jesus." And that was really the moment of inspiration. I started to write the study, and I could see pages forming around it. After I had done the presentation, and actually more than once, I realized I had the outline for a book. I was doing counseling, I was working in churches, family, and just too many other things took me away from writing the book until I retired in 2018. And in 2018, my family gave me time and space to sit down and to begin to write it. I learned there's a lot to writing a book that you have no idea, especially in getting it edited and published. But that took place in July of 2024. It was finalized and released as a book.
Your particular hybrid publisher, do they help you with marketing, or did they give you a marketing plan, or just say, hey, you're on your own?
They expect that you'll be able to do a lot of the promotion, but they're very good in giving you the direction. Each week there is a Zoom meeting, and any of their authors can join in, and there are many things that they can talk to you about promoting and marketing a book, which has been extremely helpful. And then, of course, I work with other writers groups, and we share and have tips and support one another in that regard.
Are you working on any other books or stories right now?
Right now, I'm actually spending a lot of my time in promotion in doing speaking throughout the areas in which I'm living. I'll be working with a group in Duval on a book discussion kind of thing. I'll be working with the Southern Christian Writers Guild and doing a speaking engagement with them on the writing process. As far as the writing is concerned, I do that weekly blog. It's called The Trouble with Jesus. And that's on my website, constancehastings.com. People can subscribe to that. It's meant to be a companion to the book. So between that and the promotion, the speaking, that pretty much keeps me busy for now. Though, of course, one always has in the back of their mind, and what comes next. And so we shall see.
Do you ever wish to delve into the fiction realm?
What I found is that in writing The Trouble with Jesus, Considerations Before You Walk Away, I use a creative voice in there. I call it the voice of doubt and skepticism. And that is what I feel is a creative way of putting into the narration of the life of Jesus. This actually what I've termed and known as a Greek chorus. And this chorus comments, criticizes, challenges the narration, sometimes even to the point of being interruptive. And that's the creative literary side that I like to use on that. So, not fiction per se, but it employs some of the elements of fiction in that.
Creative nonfiction. I'm a creative nonfiction person myself. I have a list of questions that I've collected over the years, and I just pick a couple at random. What advice would you give a writer working on his or her first book?
Be prepared to take care of this manuscript. Sometimes it's like a baby. You have to give it your full attention, even when you may not be sitting in front of your computer and the words flowing out of you. Your mind is going to just swirl around it all the time. Keep that in mind that there's going to have to be that kind of dedication. I know we've heard of people who have written things within days, but for the most part, people have to have that kind of commitment and being willing to almost wrestle with the story in that regard in order for it to be best presented for your reader.
What part of your book was the most fun to write?
The most fun, nobody has ever asked me that about this particular book. I think I'll have to say it was that edgy voice in there. When I wrote it, I thought I was drawing on my life experiences and observations. As I said, I was an educator for 25 years. I had a counseling practice for 18 years. So I've heard a lot and I've seen a lot. And I was drawing on that in order to write this voice. I had an editor who was a confirmed skeptic. And she said, there are parts in this narration that don't sound like it should be part of the narration. And I realized that these were my doubts and my questions that were coming to the top. So I had to go back and do some editing. But that was the most fun of working through that and being that voice for those who do not necessarily have a confirmed belief in Jesus Christ.
Do you play music while you write? And if so, what was your favorite?
I cannot write when there are lyrics being sung. It interferes with my head. However, instrumental music, particularly classical music, piano music, are the types of music that I listen to. And I find that it helps me focus and gives me a sense of peace, even as I'm working through the writing.
Everybody has their own thing. I like total silence myself. I don't know why. I have the occasional cat or the occasional dog that walks in and sits in the sun and leaves. But other than that, it's pretty quiet.
Oh, that must be wonderful.
If your story or your book was made into a movie, which actors would play the top two characters?
As far as the narration, oh, this would be a dream, but to have someone like James Earl Jones read it, someone with a strong, deep voice to bring life to that would be wonderful. As far as the voice of the doubter or the skeptic, that would be interesting. It could be a female voice, or it could be more than one voice of people, as I said, as a chorus, maybe sometimes even joining in together to ask these questions, to challenge, to sometimes even get very angry with the narration of Jesus Christ.
What common traps have you been trying to avoid in your writing process and publishing?
Discouragement. It is very easy to begin to question and say, why am I doing this? This is such a waste of time. I put too much money into this. Why am I draining myself on this? And it's easy to run down that place. And that to me is the biggest trap. You've got to understand that you have been given a story that no one else can write, whether it be fiction, nonfiction, poetry, or whatever. And that in bringing this to life, you're presenting here a voice that will last even beyond yours. Yeah, that's the beauty of literature, that it can go on for centuries. That certainly happened with the Bible, over 3,000 years of writing compiled into that. And it does with all great literature. And maybe from that, you can tell I used to be a teacher of literature.
In your non-writing life, what types of books do you enjoy reading?
There's three types that I'm centered on at this stage in my life. One of them is psychological or counseling. I still have major interest in that, though I'm not actively counseling. The second is literary. Over the years, my husband and I, through graduate work and teaching, we collected, I don't know, we must have 800 to 1,000 books in this house. And I have made a resolution. This isn't the New Year's resolution because this will go on forever, to continue to go through those stacks and pull out those books and read them. And then finally, there are books that are, we would term spiritual, devotional, theological, which of course I have a great interest in and read as well.
Do you read any fiction at all?
Yes, as I said, in literature, this past year I read Great Expectations by Charles Dickens, and
Classics.
I read The Power and the Glory by Graham Greene. Also, I read Sons and Lovers by D.H. Lawrence.
Okay, so no spicy romances or juicy mysteries for you.
I have a couple of friends who write that, and I'll delve into them when they come out.
Okay, other than the Bible, of course. What book have you read more than once?
The one that comes to mind is by William Willimon, and it's called Thank God It's Friday. The first time I read it, I was into it about 3 chapters, and it was the kind of thing where I went, oh my goodness, I hope this doesn't end. And so I read it very slowly for that reason, because I wanted it to last. I find myself going back to it year after year, just pulling it out, reading parts of it, if not just settling down through the whole thing.
Oh, good. All righty. Last question. Do you have other writers in your family?
Actually, no. I had an uncle who is a retired federal judge, and he read some law books, but I doubt any of your listeners will be reading them. But no, as I said, in a lot of ways, my journey has been one through life that might not have happened except by that direction that I feel came from God. My mother never graduated from high school. My father had a high school education. He ran a bar that he took over from his father. And my parents together ran a motel in Wildwood, New Jersey. My family, they're not academic, they're not literary. But when I was about 7 years old, I did have this uncle, the same uncle who's the judge, and he took me to the local library. And this was in the days when you would get an actual library card and you would write on there the titles of the books. And I decided that summer I was going to fill that library card. I wasn't a very good reader either. However, that began a lifelong love of reading and stories and so forth. And by the time I was in high school, I could see myself teaching literature. And then when I was in college was when I first began to think maybe you ought to consider writing. So through the years, I wrote articles that went into different publications, and that worked out very well for me. I never intended to write a book until this one fell into my lap.
Before we close out, I like to ask each author if there are 3 people that you would love to have dinner with throughout history, who would you like to have at the dinner table and why?
The first one comes to mind because of recent events, and that would be Jimmy Carter and his wife Rosalind. I would love to be able to talk with them about their life and certainly their faith, the work that they did, and would think of our nation today, what contributions are yet to be made in that way. Let's see, a second person I'd love to have in the dinner table. Could I have Jesus Christ?
Sure.
Okay. In the gospel stories, we have the story of Mary and Martha, and they had him in their home and served him dinner. And Mary was able to sit at his feet. Boy, that would certainly be wonderful as well. And finally, as far as a great writer, I would love to be able to talk with Mark Twain. And we certainly know his writings in the Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer, but he also was a satirist. I'd love to hear his comments and what voices he would bring, particularly today.
Yes, it would be very interesting. I know they've added his character to some of the Star Trek episodes, which I always found fascinating. Yeah, bring him into the future and see what he thinks.
Absolutely.
Uh, Ma'am, thank you so much for participating.
Wonderful. Thank you as well.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Jolene's Books and Writers Talk, sponsored by Southern Dragon Publishing, where we help authors tell their stories and share them with the world. A special thank you to Constance Hastings for her honesty, her thoughtful approach to the hard questions of belief, and for reminding us that literature and faith both invite us to think, not just receive. If you'd like to learn more about Constance, follow her writing, or read her book, you'll find her link in the show notes below. If you enjoyed this conversation, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share. That's how more readers, writers, and curious minds finds us. Until next time, keep reading, keep writing, and keep asking better questions.